Electric hydrofoils, or e-foils in short, are quickly becoming the next big thing. One of the most fun ways to spend time on the water. The fast, smooth, silent cruising over the surface gives you an amazing feeling of flight. But the main question remains, why are they so expensive? Today, we meet David from Australia, the creator of the Fliteboard, to ask him the most uncomfortable questions from all of our followers.
Okay, David, welcome to the show. And we had a great interview with you 2 years ago in Spain. So tell me what changed since then. You have sold more than 1,000 boards. Tell me exciting news about the Fliteboard.
Yeah, sure. Look, well, it's been a really busy time. I mean, that was a good time we had in Spain back when we could travel. The year after that was crazy busy. I think the busiest year of my life, because we went from those prototypes that you saw to the full production version. And we just did a huge amount of work because it's such a complicated product, you know, and it's being used in such a hard environment that everything has to be perfect. You could go broke very, very quickly making a product like this and not having the engineering perfect, because you've got high voltage batteries, you've got things that corrode, you've got materials that corrode together, and you've got to get the engineering right. So we just pushed ourselves really hard too. We did so much testing. We just kept trying to break things, kept trying to make things better. And we had a very busy year up until when we started shipping a year ago. And we've had a great response. You know, the boards are going really well. It means we've got confidence to scale up our production because we know that they're not going to come back. And, you know, we've won a lot of design awards and engineering awards for our work. So all of that hard work in that year after I saw you paid off.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a big fan of efoils, and you know, when I go efoiling, everybody on the beach is excited. They want to ask questions, and of course they all want to have one until they see the price tag. So today we decided to collect the most uncomfortable questions to you, to ask you about why the price is so high. So I have collected
bring it on.
some questions, and the first question is from Mark. So he's saying the regular surfboard cost is about $600 and the foil price is $1,000. So why would efoil cost 10 times more?
Yeah, sure. And look, this is something I've seen a lot of these questions online. And look, I think it's easy to look at a video of this online or a picture like the one behind me and just think that it's really simple. It's a surfboard with a motor, you know, what's complicated about that? But it's a lot involved. It's pushing something through the water takes a huge amount of power. And that's why your typical speedboat has a bigger engine than your car. You know, even a small speedboat has a V8 motor or twin V6s. Pushing something through the water requires a huge amount of power. And then you're using it in a very destructive environment in the ocean, salt water, corrosion, leaking. So all the engineering has to be perfect. And so you've got to use very expensive components and materials. On top of that, you want to make it as light as possible and as strong as possible. If you know, a regular surfboard weighs a couple of kilograms. If you drop it, it gets a ding, you fix it, it's not a big deal. When you've got a 14 kilogram battery in the board and it falls over on the beach, you don't want the board to break. Everything's got to be very, very strong. And when you've got a 100 kilo, I'm nearly 100 kilos, I'm at 90 something, riding on top of the board going 50 kilometers an hour, you know, there's a lot of forces involved and everything has to be incredibly strong. So we're only using the best materials. There's about 500 parts in a Fliteboard. I mean, that includes the battery cells, of which there's about 200 or 196 battery cells. So there's a lot of expensive components and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And making it light and small is more expensive. You know, the way that you make a jet ski is actually cheaper. I mean, you've got cast metal parts, which are quite cheap. You've got a molded plastic, which is quite cheap. When you start manually making something by hand using carbon fiber to make it so light, everything gets a lot more expensive. So we can look at this a few different ways. You know, one is to kind of factually sort of work through the product from top to bottom, and we can do that. We can have a chat about the different components and compare them to other types of products. But the other way is just to look at the value as well. You know, I think no one ever asked this question. We get this question a lot online, so it's a common question, and you know, I can see why people would ask it. I would ask it too if I'd never seen one and wanted to buy one. But it's not a question we ever get asked at a boat show. You know, I've spoken to hundreds of people at boat shows, and when you can actually see the board and you see what's involved, you know, it's pretty obvious that this is a very sophisticated vehicle that has a lot of technology and expensive materials. It's really self-evident when you see it, particularly when you see all the things that come with it. You know, the bags, the chargers, the wing covers, you know, all the different aspects that really make it complete. But the other way is to look at the value. You know, it's I've spent far more on my kite surfing equipment or my windsurfing equipment over the years than I have if I was buying myself a Fliteboard. It's a sport, you know, it's not just a toy you put in the corner and you use once. People that buy Fliteboards love them. You know, they get out. I rode mine yesterday and the day before, and you know, I've ridden it thousands of times now. And that's because I love doing it. And people spend thousands of dollars on golf clubs or tens of thousands of dollars on all sorts of things that they really are passionate about, whether it's a carbon bike or a motorbike or a jet ski. There's lots of hobbies in the world. So I think, you know, it does offer incredible value, because compared to all of those other things, what we constantly hear from our customers is it's just like magic. You know, it's magic. It's an incredible experience of quietly flying over the water, and you can't really put a price on that.
Exactly. So the next question is, what goes into making a quality and lasting efoil? So let's compare the components of efoil to carbon sailboard and electric outboard motor.
Sure. So there's a few different parts to the efoil. It's really, you know, the Fliteboard is many products in one. And so I've got some of these parts here. So, you know, the power unit. So this is our power unit. We've got our motor down here and a motor controller up the top here. This one's just been finished today. It's going to be off to the US this week. So in Europe, you know, this costs about €3,500 for this component. It's a 5 kilowatt motor is what it puts out. The motor can actually do about 12 kilowatt. The motor controller in here can do 20 kilowatts. You know, this is like 30 horsepower, but we're running it at 5 kilowatts with the voltage and so forth that we're using. So this also weighs about 7 kilograms. Now, if you compare that to something that's equivalent, you know, people say it's just a trolling motor is cheap. A trolling motor on a boat is 500 watts. So this is 10 times more power than a trolling motor. So it's 10 trolling motors. And the batteries on trolling motors are usually 12 or 24 volt. And they're lead acid, they're heavy, they're cheap. This has to be very light and very powerful. So the closest thing to this is probably your Torqeedo electric outboard. So Torqeedo is a German company. They make great electric outboard motors. They make a 4 kilowatt electric outboard, which is a little bit less than this, 20% less power than this. And that costs about the same. It's about €3,500, you know, without the battery. And that weighs 18 kilograms instead of 7. So this is really, you know, we've had to really slim this right down to make this work and make it as responsive and agile and high performance. And to get the motor to this very small diameter, this is the smallest diameter efoil you can buy. And that means less drag, more efficiency, more responsiveness. We've got a German-made gearbox in here that increases the torque. You know, there's a lot of technology that goes into doing this. So it's, you know, it's handling a lot of power. So like for like, the efoil unit's pretty much the same price as an equivalent electric outboard motor, which actually weighs twice as much. Our battery is about €3,000, you know, plus VAT and so forth. There's 196 cells in our Explore battery. That's for our big battery. They're really expensive cells. You know, people say, well, battery cells are all the same. They're not all the same. You know, there are other products out there on the market that use a cell that's half the price of our cell. So if you Google our battery cells, you know, they I think in euros, they're about €6 each. We're using 196 of them. There's a lot of cost in those battery cells before they even get made into a battery, electronics added, the case added, which is machined out of aluminium, etc. And again, an equivalent battery from Torqeedo is about the same price, but with a bit more capacity, but it's a lot heavier. Then you come to our board. You know, it's not just a regular surfboard. And you know, a good example here is the lid on the board over the back here is made out of compression molded carbon fiber that's molded over a very light but very strong core. And this has to be strong enough that I can jump on it with my 100 kilos and it's not going to twist or warp. It has to be very stiff. Otherwise the seal will fail, water gets inside. So that lid, I mean, I'll tell you, that lid costs us $250 to make that lid. You know, that's probably twice the price or 3 times the price of the cost of making a surfboard. That's just the lid. That's not the board. That's the lid of the board, you know. So this board, when you take the lid away and the stainless steel marine grade latches and the hinges and all of those things, the seals, you're left with a PVC sandwich carbon board, which is very similar to the same sort of construction of a high-end sailboard. So you can look up, if you look up a high-end sailboard, I had an example of I think it was a Fanatic foil board, like a windsurfing board that you put a foil on. So same sort of construction, actually less expensive to make because it doesn't have the battery compartment. So it's a little, and it doesn't have the very strong mast box that we've got for the Efoil. So it's pretty much the same price. It's about €2,500 for a PVC sandwich carbon board. That's a high quality one, you know, so everything is like for like. Now, you go through the wings, you know, we've got our wings. Here's one of our carbon fiber wings in its little wing cover. And so these are compression molded. There's a lot of hand finishing, hand painting, hand sanding, carbon fiber. That's, if you look up hydrofoil wings, like a good brand like Axis or somebody, our wings are the same price, you know, they're around €500. So then we've got our new XL wing here, this big guy, which we're just about to release. So this is, I'll show you the comparison. Sorry, I've gone off track. So it's a much bigger wing. This will get you up and foiling much at a much lower speed, heavier riders and so forth. So this wing, this weighs 1.4 kilograms. Now we've tested this with 500 kilograms of static pressure to see if it's going to snap, you know, pressure on each side, and it can handle 500 kilograms of static pressure, but it weighs 1.4 kilograms. So that sort of stuff is not cheap to make, and it all adds up. On top of all of that, you've got a charger. You know, the charger we sell as a Delta Q IC1200. It's an off-the-shelf charger. They retail for about €800. We're selling it for the recommended retail price. So all of these things, you know, add up, and it all combines to make, you know, to make something that's pretty amazing. Now, of course, we haven't set out to make the cheapest Efoil. We've set out to make the best Efoil. I wouldn't want to be a company trying to make the cheapest Efoil, because, again, you could go out of business very, very quickly, because even if somebody's spending half as much as they're spending on a Fliteboard, you know, if it breaks after 2 months of using it in the ocean, you're not going to be happy. You know, this is something that should last for many, many years. It should be able to be repaired and maintained, you know, for a long, long time into the future. It's a vehicle, you know, it's what people expect out of a vehicle. So when I first started on this project, that was my goal, was to make this more accessible. But I quickly worked out that making a cheap Efoil is kind of like making a cheap parachute. it's probably not a good idea. You know, you might sell a whole lot of them, but then you might have to, you know, fix a whole lot of them as well. Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot involved that that you don't really get when you just see a picture on Instagram.
All right. So the next question is from John. The e-skateboards usually are priced about $250. So why would Efoil battery be so expensive? It's like 10 times more than Onewheel.
Yeah, sure. And again, I think there's so much power involved to push something through the water. You know, again, if you take the boat example, you know, rolling something on the hard ground is pretty easy. It doesn't require a lot of power. So if you look at a Onewheel as an example, you know, Onewheels are great. You know, we've got Onewheels that we use in the office. I've got one. They're great fun, and it's a very similar experience to riding a Fliteboard. But on the ground, you need a lot more power. So if you take the most powerful Onewheel, which is a Onewheel XR, it has a 750 watt motor. So our motor is 5 kilowatts. So it's 7 times more power. And again, like I said before, the motor can handle much more power than that. So our actual motor can handle 15 times the power of a Onewheel motor. And then you look at the battery within the Onewheel. So a Onewheel's got around a 320 watt hour battery. We've got a 2,100 watt hour battery, which is 7 times greater. So if you just did this on price and said, okay, a Onewheel XR is €2,000, times it by 7, just for the simple components of the motor and the battery, that's €14,000. That's, you know, a Fliteboard's €11,000 plus VAT. So so in that sense, a Fliteboard is actually much better value per kilowatt hour and per kilowatt of power than a one-wheel. Not to mention the fact that a one-wheel is really made of injection molded plastic, which is super cheap to make. You know, like once you've got the tooling set up, it's injection molded plastic is very cheap. It's got some aluminium components, and it's definitely got to deal with some waterproofing, and it's using some high quality materials and timber and so forth. But the cost of those materials compared to the materials that go into the board or into this carbon wing, you know, it's a totally different setup. I mean, we've got a production line for our boards that has 70 people working on it, that goes through many, many processes, hand processes, multiple layers and molding and finishing and sanding and polishing, which is very different to making a one wheel. So again, one wheels are great, and I think, you know, they're good value for the fun that they provide. Having that experience out on the water is something that's completely different again, you know, and Fliteboard can go faster than one wheel. We can get a Fliteboard up to 50 k's an hour, which is, you know, a lot faster than a one wheel, and we've got similar range, even though we're pushing through the water. So when you look at it on that in that way, it's again it starts to make a bit more sense.
All right. And I guess the most annoying question for you when you see people comments is, I could buy jet ski for that price. So let's compare it to jet ski for some reason.
Would you really want to buy a jet ski? I think look, jet skis, look, if you've never had any experience in water sports, I think a jet ski probably looks like a very exciting thing. You get on it, it's like a motorbike, you can drive around on the water. And if you've got a boat, or you've got a family and you want to ferry people around or tow people, the jet ski is great, you know, but I think it's very different. The feeling of riding a jet ski just for riding's sake compared to riding a Fliteboard, you can't compare it. You know, I mean, I've been on holidays and I've been bored at you know, a beach club, and I've had nothing to do, and I've rented a jet ski for half an hour. And after 20 minutes, I've taken it back and said, okay, you can have it back, you know, because I'm used to doing really kind of extreme water sports, surfing, kite surfing, windsurfing, and they're really challenging and they're really rewarding, because you're trying to take off on a wave, you're trying to balance the kite and the board, and then just to sit on a jet ski and pull the trigger. I mean, it's like driving a car. I mean, you know, driving cars are fun too, but it's very different to that exhilaration you get. And so you do get that exhilaration from a Fliteboard, because you have to make it fly. You know, you've got to balance the wings and you've got to make everything work. And even when you've been doing it a long time, like I have, and you've done it many, many times, you can still push yourself to the point where you get the adrenaline and you're going to have big wipeouts, you know? So I think the first thing is, it's a different market. I mean, if you really want to buy a Fliteboard, you're probably not going to want a jet ski. The other thing about a jet ski is you've got to trailer it. It's heavy. It's 500 kilos or 300 kilos instead of 30. You've got to trailer it. You've got to have insurance. You've got to go to a boat ramp. There's a lot of things you've got to do. But of course, the fuel cost is huge. You know, jet skis, if you can put up with the noise, because they're incredibly noisy, you know, they burn a huge amount of fuel. And so when you factor in the fuel cost, it actually makes I worked out the other day that even if you got given a jet ski for free, it would be more expensive to own than a Fliteboard over a number of years, because the fuel cost alone is going to be more than the cost of the Fliteboard and the battery. You know, when you buy a Fliteboard, you get the power source. You know, you've got a battery, and let's say you get 500 hours of use out of your battery, or more, 600 hours of use. A Fliteboard, the cost of energy to charge that battery is 1% the cost of the fuel that goes into a jet ski. So when you've spent 100 euros charging up your Fliteboard battery, you've spent about 1,700, 2,000 euros on jet ski fuel. You know, so over the life of your battery, you've spent probably, you know, 10,000, 14,000 euros in fuel costs. So I think it's not really correct to think that a cheap jet ski is going to be less expensive than a Fliteboard. And again, I think that's for a very different purpose. If you like a jet ski, you're probably not going to enjoy the Fliteboard as much. It might be a bit too extreme, unless it's a stand-up jet ski, which again is very expensive and much more than a Fliteboard. Uses even more fuel. And if you like a Fliteboard, you're probably not going to want to ride around on a jet ski for too long, you know, for hours every day, like a lot of our passionate customers do.
Yeah, you basically replied my next question when I was about to ask you. So electric engines against the petrol engines. Basically what you're saying is electric is much more economical long term.
Much more economical. I mean, if you've got solar, I've got solar at my house. You know, it's free to charge the battery. But even if you don't have solar and you're using electricity, it's something like less than $1 or in Australian dollars to charge a Flite cell. The other part, though, that's really important is the noise and the environmental impact. You know, like jet skis are incredibly loud. They're really only fun if you're going really fast. A lot of people die every year on jet skis. They're very dangerous because they're designed to go very fast in shallow water, and they're very, very heavy. And so they're being banned in a lot of places. And if you go out for a ride and use 10 kilograms of fuel, that's 10 kilo. Well, that's more than 10 kilograms. It's all of those emissions and carbon is going into the atmosphere, into the water, into the ocean. But to fly around on a powered craft like a Fliteboard and not have the noise, I mean, there's no other powered craft you can have that experience. I mean, the motor does make some noise. You can hear it. No one else can really hear it. If someone's 30 meters away from you, they won't hear the noise. But it's very quiet. You know, it comes across a lot louder in the videos and things. But when you're riding it, it's very quiet, and you hear the wind noise more than the motor noise sometimes, or the splashing when you touch down. And that's a really magical kind of experience to have that feeling, which is very different to again a jet ski. So it's a very different experience. Also, being up above the chop, you're not bouncing around like this. So it's you can't really even compare it. I'd love to see less jet skis on the water. They're great for the people that are into them for sport, but I think where we live, it's a very sensitive area for the marine park, and skis aren't allowed at all.
A lot of people really don't realize that a lot goes into the post-sale service and support after they buy expensive products. So tell me more about what happens if the board breaks.
Yeah, for sure. So look, this is really important because again, it's vehicle, and like when you buy a car or a motorbike, you've got to be able to get it serviced. I mean, electric vehicles are much simpler than petrol. A Flite is going to be more reliable than a jet ski. Jet skis break down quite often. But things will still go wrong. You run into rocks, you run into sandbars. They don't really do much. I mean, that'll kind of scrape a wing or damage a wing. Every now and then somebody might break a propeller. Things like that. So we've got service centers. So in 12 months, we've got about 70 commercial partners now, many in Europe, many in the US, Australia, Hong Kong, different places that can do service and support. We've invested a lot in our own team and our systems so that we can send out parts quickly and get people back on the water. Most things in a Fliteboard can be replaced in an hour or 2 hours at most. So the most complicated thing is replacing the motor, because you've got to pull this whole thing apart. But that's something that our guys downstairs in the workshop can do in an hour or so. And again, it's unusual that a motor needs to be replaced, but we've designed everything to be very modular so that it's very easy to keep looking after it, upgrading it, repairing it, fixing it into the future. So we expect our customers to get out and ride their boards all the time. We ride our boards literally almost every day, and we're still trying to break them, but we haven't succeeded yet.
All right. So when people are trying to find the cheaper eFoil, they usually go to Alibaba, and then they see those generic Chinese brands half the price. What do you have to say about those Chinese boards from Alibaba?
Well, actually, yeah, well, be careful is what I'd say. We had a customer thought that they bought 5 Fliteboards from Alibaba last week, paid quite a few $1,000s, and ended up being a scammer. It wasn't a real product. I mean, the only place you can buy a Fliteboard is from Fliteboard or from one of our authorized dealers, which are on our website. Nowhere else. People think we buy this as a complete product from China and we get it shipped to us. We make this here in Australia. Boards made in a board factory in Thailand. The batteries are assembled in China with parts from different countries and cells from Korea. So it's not a part that gets just made by a factory in China. It's far more complicated than that. The electronic components we make in Australia, the hand controls we assemble ourselves, the bag made somewhere else, the chargers come from the US. So if you see a Fliteboard online for sale and it's cheap, it's not a Fliteboard. If it's another type of eFoil, again, be very, very careful, because there's really only 2 companies that have the required patents to sell these products in some markets, like the US and parts of Europe. Some cheaper products around, I've never seen one. I've never used one. So, you know, again, just be careful, I think, because it's important that, you know, you're buying something that needs to be looked after and serviced and supported, and it's important that the product comes with a warranty. We offer a 2-year warranty on our Fliteboard, which is pretty unheard of when it comes to surfboards. I mean, and things that go in salt water, and that's how we've designed it. It's a vehicle and we want it to last.
Okay, and what do you think about the future of battery technology? Do you think it's going to be a little bit cheaper over years, improve, and be more affordable for the mass markets?
Yeah, sure. So I think you hear a lot about, like, everything's going electric in the world, and it's good and it's bad. I mean, the good news is that there's billions of dollars being invested in battery technology. You know, at the moment, we're using the same technology that Tesla use, you know, in terms of the N650 cells or the 7100 cells, you know, that it's the same type of chemistry. Actually, our cells have to work a lot harder than a Tesla cell, because if you ride a Fliteboard flat out, you can discharge each cell in half an hour. If you drive a Tesla flat out, it's still going to take you quite a few hours to drain the battery. So our cells have to work a lot harder, and we use very high discharge cells, which is why they cost a lot of money. I mean, typically, you know, I can ride for 2 hours using our big wing. So, but look, battery technology is evolving, but it's not as though the cells that we're using are getting any cheaper. They're actually not, because you've got new innovations coming. We're waiting for big step changes, and we'll certainly adopt them if they arrive, and they're things that we can adopt. But you've also got a lot of people competing for cells and for lithium, and, you know, as everything starts using you know, electric power and battery power, there's people, you know, competing to buy all these cells, and so that actually pushes the price up. So, you know, it is trending down. We certainly hope that we can offer less expensive Fliteboards in the future. It's, of course, we want to be able to reach a much bigger market. We'd love all the people that you know, that follow us and talk to us and send us messages to be able to buy a Fliteboard for a cheaper price. We're working on things that will be less expensive. You know, they're not things that are going to come out in the next 12 months. You know, they're a couple of seasons away, and they're not going to replace the current product either. I mean, these are sort of different products that offer a different kind of proposition for a different budget. So we're really excited about that, but, you know, it's going to take some time until this. We've been shipping our product for a year. We spent many years developing it, so we're going to be, you know, we've got a bit more time yet to be refining it and selling it as it is.
Okay, so let's compare Efoil to traditional electric jetboard. The main problem with jetboards, they're extremely heavy, about 45 kilograms on average, and they have around 20-30 minutes of riding time. So how Efoil is solving this issue?
Yeah, well, this is the amazing thing about hydrofoils, which makes the Efoil work so well, is that, you know, what I've detected myself is that we've got we're one of the only Efoils that we have a GPS, we have a current meter. You can see a whole lot of statistics when you're riding the board, and also afterwards with our Flite app as well, you can download and see the data. So I know on a really windy, choppy day, if I'm riding into the wind on the Pro board with the small wing, you know, I can use, you know, almost 90, 100 amp to get the board planing of current, to, you know, nearly 5 kilowatts. If I'm trying to get up really quickly and it's sort of choppy in a headwind, once the board's planing, that power halves, you know, back to maybe 45 amps of current. When I'm up on the foil, it halves again, you know, more like 25 amps of current. So, you know, the power halves when you get planing, and it halves again when you get up on the foil, just in very general terms. So that means that really we're using half the power of a jetboard within a particular speed range. You know, as you start pushing towards the limits of the top speed, obviously you start using all that power again, and you get back up to using, you know, 90 to 100 amps of current if you want to ride at sort of, you know, 45 k's an hour. So but the foil makes a massive difference. It really halves the current. It means you can have half the size battery. The battery's half the cost. You can carry it. Everything becomes more maneuverable and responsive. So, you know, I think there's a lot of big potential for hydrofoils to be fitted on other types of marine craft. You know, I think they have been for many years, but there's new technologies now that allow you to create, you know, carbon fiber foils, and you see what's happening with the America's Cup and things like that. So yeah, the hydrofoil makes a huge difference in terms of making battery power work in a marine environment. That's how we get such a long runtime out of a Fliteboard.
Okay, and the next question is also quite popular. So I often see that people say it's not a sport if you're putting a motor on it. So it's quite like cheating. And you are a champion in kitesurfing yourself. So what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, for sure. So look, again, I grew up surfing. I surfing when I was sort of 10 years old, windsurfing when I was probably 12, kitesurfing 20 years ago. What makes all of those sports so engaging is they're challenging, you know, particularly surfing. You know, I'm still trying to work out how to be a good surfer. They're really challenging, you know, when you're dealing with the elements and you're dealing with things that are out of your control. And so certainly, you know, it's having a motor might diminish that, but I think the thing about an eFoil is that you still have to control this thing. That it's still a challenge. You know, you're making this hydrofoil work. So as you know, because you've got one, you know, the way that they're so responsive to your weight, you can push on your big toe and the nose comes down, or it turns to the right, or you push on your heel and it turns to the left. You know, you've got to really lock your core and you've got to relax, but at the same time, really concentrate on controlling this thing. And the faster you go, the more you need to concentrate. And so it's a challenge like all of those sports, and you are using forces of nature. You know, you're using this force of you're using gravity, you're using lift and drag and all the things that birds and dolphins and things, you know, use as well. And you know, all of this comes from nature. You know, the power source is different. It's not swell energy, it's not wind energy, it's hopefully solar energy being stored in a battery, but the way you control it is still challenging and demanding, and so it's rewarding. And that's why sitting on a jet ski isn't quite as much fun. Doing a backflip on a stand-up jet ski, that's a different story. That's challenging, you know. And it's all about, I think, with all of those other sports, it's about trying to find that moment where you're in that feeling of real presence. You know, you're really present in nature and you're really dialed into exactly what you're doing. And that's the feeling we're trying to create. And we do create that feeling with the Fliteboard. And that's why I go out on a Fliteboard almost every day. I surf sometimes, I kite surf sometimes, not as often as I used to. The Fliteboard's now become my go-to because it's so easy. You know, I've got a place at the beach. I literally walk down onto the sand and I jump on the Fliteboard and I go. And I can do that whether there's surf or no surf or wind or no wind, it doesn't matter. And so, you know, all of those other sports are amazing, and Fliteboard doesn't take anything away from them. They're amazing sports, they always will be. But you can't surf, you know, around Italy in the Mediterranean when there's no wind or there's no surf, and you can't windsurf and kite surf around those amazing cliffs in Sicily and things like that. So it's, you know, it's another way that you can have that same feeling, and you're certainly still tapping into the forces of nature when you're doing it.
And we can also add that it's not just cruising. You can do a lot of radical tricks, jumps, you know, ride the surf.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And look, this is the part that we're really excited about, you know, is where this goes as a sport. And we've just been really busy, you know, building 1,000 Fliteboards over the last year. We get out for quick rides and we test things, but there's so much potential. And you would have seen Simon, who's one of our engineers. You know, he's been attempting backflips. He's got foot straps. You know, whenever there's we're out riding in the waves all the time. Whenever there's surf, we're getting pretty good now at getting out and duck diving Fliteboards in pretty big surf. So we're out in the waves all the time, riding waves, and we've done some racing, which is amazing fun and got huge potential. So yeah, and look, this is what's great about this is for our customers to invent as well. You know, we've created the platform, and now we've got 1,000 customers out there who can really work out what it means as a sport. It's not necessarily up to us to decide that. It's up to all the people that own Fliteboards to push limits and boundaries and see what they can do with them.
Yeah, and another very important part, what makes this product so expensive, is making sure that the battery is waterproof, because we are dealing with salty water.
and a lot of other products have a lot of issues with battery fires, with the battery leaking. So how Fliteboard is solving this issue?
Yeah, no, it's a really big issue. It's really important. You know, I mean, it's these are really powerful batteries. We haven't had we haven't had a problem with the Fliteboard battery, but I've seen other products. I've seen videos of other products that have had a problem, and you know, it can create a big fire. It's something you've got to take very, very seriously. We designed our battery case and then redesigned it and redesigned it and redesigned it and redesigned it. We designed it 7 times. We did drop tests from 2 meters high. We filled them up with salt water. We did so much testing to really push our battery and our battery case and our battery technology to make it safe. And that's one of the reasons why we're using very expensive cells, because we want to operate very within the envelope of the cell very safely. You know, where if we use the cheapest cell, we'd be pushing the cell to its limits when we're riding really fast, and the cell would be getting quite hot. So we've been very conservative around all those sorts of things. We've come up with some really important new innovations in our battery. So we've removed things that are flammable from within inside the battery, even things like, you know, the jackets on the wires that go around the balance wires. We don't have those wires in our battery because what we found in our testing is that, you know, they can actually catch fire and create short circuits and create flames, which eventually can cause a cell to go up. So we've developed a new technology so we can avoid. So that's just one of many things that we've done. You know, we've got a sight glass on our battery, which is a new innovation that we came up with for batteries, so that you can, you know, you should keep your battery dry. It should be dry inside your board. It can get wet. It's totally waterproof, but it's like your iPhone. You know, if you keep your battery dry, it's even safer. If your battery does end up completely underwater and you're not sure whether water's got inside it or not, because you might have dropped it or cracked it or something, we've got a system where you can stand the battery down, you can tip it over. Within a couple of seconds, you know, 1 teaspoon of water inside that battery will run into a reservoir, and it will change the color of a sticker, and you can see in through this little window that sticker changes color. So then you know, you've got really confident that no water's been inside your battery. Again, even if some water has been inside, it's not going to just go and catch on fire because we've taken a lot of steps. But these are things that we've done that I haven't seen in other marine battery products. So, you know, we've gone to a lot of trouble to make it as safe as possible.
Yeah. Amazing, David. I hope now people see how much detail, how much attention you're putting into the smallest detail in all this technology to make sure that it works safe, it works for a long time, and that people can enjoy it. And that's why pretty much it's so expensive. It's understandable, at least for me. So to wrap it up, tell me what's coming for Fliteboard. I know you just released the new app and you're planning to release the new wing. So what's coming?
What's coming? Yes, so we've released our Flite app. I'm really excited about that. It's taken a huge amount of work. There's a lot more features coming in the future, because what it allows us to do now is upgrade the software in the Efoil, the software in the receiver, in the board, and the hand controller through the app. So we've got over-the-air updates, and we can keep making the Fliteboard smarter. You know, it's already, I think, the smartest board you can buy, and we've got accelerometers, we've got GPS, we've got lots of different sensors, and we can start using more of those sensors and making the board smarter over time. We can change throttle curves, we can gamify the system, there's a lot of things we can do now. We've got that app platform in place. So that's really exciting. I think I really like the idea of someone, you know, buying a product and the product actually gets better over time, you know. Of course, we want people to buy future versions of the Fliteboard, but we want to keep making the current Fliteboard better for our customers as well. It's a big investment, and we want our customers to own our boards and enjoy them for many years. So the app's something that I'm really excited about. Yeah, we've got our big XL wing, which is going to be great for our schools. You know, we've now got 56 schools around the world that are now teaching people how to, you know, to Fliteboard all around Europe, you know, Spain. I think we've just had one open up in Portugal, actually. So someone told me today, or it's coming very soon, not far from you. The US, Germany, everywhere. So the big wing is going to make that a lot easier. It just means you can get up and foil really slowly. And again, we get often asked, how fast does the Fliteboard go? But I think a lot of this is also about how slow can it go? You know, how slowly can you have that experience of flying and foiling above the water? So we've been working on that with our big XL wing. That's taken quite a bit of work. We've made lots of little changes to the board. So I think little things, just, you know, recessing hinges, putting in battery retaining clips, increasing some of the spacing between different materials to reduce potential for corrosion, things like that. Lots of little changes just to perfect the product. I mean, this is my passion. This is, you know, I absolutely love water sports, always have, and I love this whole concept. And I had this idea 3 or 4 years ago, and I could see this thing in my mind, and I just wanted to create it. And fortunately, in a position where I could really throw everything into it. And so, you know, we're here for the long term. You know, we really want to make our customers very happy. That's our goal, and make it really fun and easy to own a Fliteboard. And so we're really, I suppose, a lot of our effort's gone into improving our manufacturing process and our production process, so we can get more boards out to more people. We've still got quite a lot of demand. This month will be our biggest month of production so far, obviously coming up to summer. So even though people are locked down in different parts of the world, you know, what could there be better to come out of lockdown and go out on the water and fly around a Fliteboard? It's an amazing experience. So look, you know, we're working on other things for the future, which are exciting, but, you know, I can't talk too much about those, but, you know, we might talk about that more, you know, in the next sort of 6 months or so. So, no, look, we're just building as many Fliteboards as we can, and looking after our customers, and doing a bit of dreaming around the things we can do in the future, but that's all going to take a couple of years.
All right, and the final question is, you have so many options right now. You have inflatable, the standard one, the professional one, the long mast, the short mast. Which one is best option for people to get started, or what's the difference?
Oh, look, yeah, for sure. Look, I think the regular 99-litre Fliteboard with a 75-centimetre mast, with the cruiser wing, it's pretty much the default configuration. If you go to fliteboard.com and you go to configure, the default configuration is what I recommend for most people. The white carbon is a really good option. It doesn't get too hot in the sun. I mean, the blackboards are totally fine too. I mean, I leave our blackboard out in the sun all day to try and cook it. I've got it up to 95 degrees Celsius and it's going strong. But you know, the white one I think is you know, it's a little bit more durable than the ash, which is also a great option. Looks great. That option of the, you know, the silver mast doesn't mark as much as the black. You know, so that default option is really what we recommend. You know, if you want to be able to drag something on and off a dock or on and off a boat, the inflatable is a bit more durable, and the inflatable is good for heavier riders. But as you progress, you know, after you've spent 3 or 4 or 5 hours fliteboarding, everyone pretty much becomes a pro. You know, like once you've spent a few hours fliteboarding, it's like riding a bike, you know. And so most people with a Fliteboard would be able to progress to a pro within you know, 4 or 5 days of using their board, no problem. So if you're a lighter rider, a smaller rider or a lighter rider, the Pro board is going to be a little bit easier to maneuver because it's got less swing weight. So it's a bit more easy to control the center of gravity over the center of gravity of the foil. The inflatable is a little bit harder in some ways, but it's easier to get up on the plane in the first place. So, you know, that 99-litre regular Fliteboard is a great option. If you really love your water sports and you think you're going to progress quite quickly, you can learn on the Pro. It just takes a little bit more work. If you're using it in somewhere that's got a lot of shallow water, or you know, you want to be a little bit more cautious, then having a shorter mast is an option as well. I mean, they all work fantastically well. So we've got people that have the inflatable boards that absolutely love them. Personally, you know, I have to ride a Pro board these days on a fly wing. I just absolutely love it. It's like an extension of me these days. I just, you know, love that feeling. And but look, they're all great. Can't go wrong.
All right, David. Thank you so much for your time. I hope it's been very helpful for people. Thank you. I hope you
Thanks
have
very much, Mike. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
have a great day. Good to talk to you. See you.
Yeah,
Bye.
take care. Cheers.